Back when I first started the channel, I made a video about the Watchtower's interpretation of the Good Samaritan and how so off the mark it is. And I had a former viewer who's been following me for a long time write to me and ask me if I could repost the video. So I went back and found it and I rewatched it, and I realized this is extremely pertinent still today. It very much applies to the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses and the way they look at other people and how they grotesquely misquote and describe what Jesus has to say and twist it into something it was not meant to be. So here is my video called The Incorrect Samaritan when I first posted it. I hope you appreciate it. I'm sorry for my terrible hair. I was very new out of the religion at the time and hadn't quite figured out how to look worldly in a better kind of way. But that aside, I think you'll appreciate it. I hope that you do. Be sure to let me know after it's done what you think in the comments. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to go into a paragraph that's found in the May 2017 study edition of the Watchtower. The article is entitled "Helping Foreign Residents to Serve Jehovah with Rejoicing," and the paragraph is number 19. The issue here is that this paragraph references the Good Samaritan parable, one of Jesus' most famous, if not his most famous parable. Now, before I read what that paragraph says in relation to the Good Samaritan parable, let's read the Good Samaritan parable. And I'm going to read it out of the New World Translation. This is my late father's Bible. I kept it as a keepsake when he died because it was very important to him. So I'll read it straight out of the New World Translation just to make sure that we're on the same page, literally and metaphorically, with Watchtower and the way they reference the Good Samaritan. Okay, we're going to read Luke chapter 10, verse 29 through verse 37. This is what it says. "But wanting to prove himself righteous, the man said to Jesus, 'Who really is my neighbor?' In reply, Jesus said, 'A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell victim to robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went off, leaving him half dead. Now by coincidence, a priest was going down on that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the opposite side. But a certain Samaritan traveling the road came upon him, and at seeing him, he was moved with pity. So he approached him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. Then he mounted him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and whatever you spend besides this, I will repay you when I return.' Who of these 3 seems to you to have made himself neighbor to the man who fell victim to the robbers?" He said, "The one who acted mercifully toward him." Jesus then said to him, "Go and do the same yourself." So here we have Jesus' famous parable. A Jew is attacked and beaten by robbers and left half dead on the side of the road. A priest walks by and ignores him. A Levite walks by and ignores him. The 2 people in all of Jewish society who you would think would stop to help the Jew who was attacked, but they ignore him. But then a Samaritan man comes by, sees the injured man, and has pity for him, and binds up his wounds and takes him to an inn to make sure he's cared for. This is remarkable because the Jews looked down on the Samaritans and saw them as their enemies, okay? And so Jesus is illustrating the point that this Samaritan man, who was the enemy of the Jew who was attacked, or at least that's how the Jew would see it, stopped and helped him anyway, had compassion for him anyway, when even the priest and the Levite, the Jews' own national blood, right, did not. All right, now let's see what Watchtower says about the Good Samaritan parable in paragraph 19 of the May 2017 edition of the Watchtower in the article, Helping Foreign Residents to Serve Jehovah with Rejoicing. Paragraph 19 says this: like the neighborly Samaritan in Jesus' illustration, we want to help suffering people, including those who are not witnesses. And then it references Luke chapter 10 and the parable of the Good Samaritan. So far, so good. But notice what it says next. The best way to do so is by sharing the good news with them. Now it gets worse, but before I get into that, sharing the good news with them. Was there anywhere in the parable that we read where the good news was being shared with the man who was attacked and beaten by the robbers by the Samaritan? Did the Samaritan come up to him, say, I am moved with pity for you, let me preach to you now? No, he didn't. That is not what happened at all. But it gets worse. Notice what the paragraph says next. Quote, it is important to make clear right away that we are Jehovah's Witnesses and that our primary mission is to help them spiritually, not materially, notes an elder who has helped many refugees. Otherwise, some may associate with us only for personal advantage. Our primary mission is to help them spiritually, not materially. Otherwise, says this elder, they might try to take advantage of us. Now, I admit that that could be a problem if you were a missionary. It could be that the people you're preaching to try to take advantage of you for material assistance by feigning interest in your message. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. What I'm saying is to try and apply that circumstance to the Good Samaritan parable makes no sense at all. Because everything that the Samaritan did for the Jew who was attacked was physical support. Let's go through it. First, he bound up his wounds and poured oil and wine on them. This is physical, material support. Then he put him on his own animal and brought him to an inn. More material, physical support. He then pays the innkeeper 2 denarii, 2 coins, right? This is money he's spending so that the innkeeper will take care of the man who was attacked. Material support. And he tells him, take care of him, and anything else you have to spend in addition to this, I will repay you when I come back here. More money, more material support. And yet, the paragraph says that our primary mission is to help them spiritually, not materially. If your primary mission is to help them spiritually and not materially, then the Good Samaritan parable does not apply to what you're doing at all, because all it talks about is how the Samaritan helped the Jew in a real material way when he was moved with pity and showed compassion for him. But there's another way in which Watchtower is very much mistaken in their application of the Good Samaritan illustration to the preaching work. They have it backwards. You see, they applied the Good Samaritan parable to Jehovah's Witnesses preaching to refugees or immigrants, all right? But in the parable, it's the other way around. It's the Samaritan, the immigrant from Samaria, another country, who stops to help the Jew. Not the Jew who stops to help the Samaritan. I mean, that's the whole point of the parable, is that this man, this Samaritan who was looked down on by the Jews, stopped to help this Jewish man who was hurt and robbed when not even his own people would stop to help him. Thereby, the Samaritan is the true neighbor of the Jew. That's the whole point of the parable. But Watchtower has it completely backwards. They're applying the Samaritan role to themselves while preaching to the immigrants or refugees from another country. But the parable has the man from another country being the one to help the local, the native, the Jew. So Watchtower is wrong on all counts, in every conceivable way, and their application of this parable of Jesus to the preaching work. It doesn't apply to the preaching work. There's no mention of the good news in the parable at all. And they have it backwards because it's the Samaritan helping the Jew, not the Jew helping the Samaritan. And all of the assistance that the Samaritan gives the Jew is purely material, physical assistance. Now that begs the question, why? Why is Watchtower doing this? Well, if you ask me, and this is just my opinion, Watchtower can't give you the real meaning of the illustration of the Good Samaritan because it's all about material and physical support for other people, being a true neighbor. But Watchtower doesn't do any of that. They don't have any charities, no food banks, they don't do any homeless outreach, they don't run any hospitals, they don't have any kind of physical or material support at all whatsoever for anybody, including Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't provide that material support, with the only exception being if there's a natural disaster, they will send relief. Well, actually, they'll get relief from witnesses and distribute it to the people in those disaster areas. But as a rule, they do not help non-Jehovah's Witnesses. So again, Good Samaritan does not apply to them in this way. But they don't want to talk about that, you see. Most of the time, the only material or physical support anyone's going to get from Jehovah's Witnesses is only if the witness, out of the goodness of their heart, chooses to spend their own money to help someone. The Watchtower does not facilitate this in any kind of a charitable or organized way. In fact, they speak ill of charities in their literature, which that's fine if you think that charities are, from Satan, or not doing a good job, or paying their people too much. They make all these arguments in their literature. But they could start their own charity, and they don't do that either. So their application in this case, it just doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't apply to the preaching work. It doesn't apply to them talking to immigrants, and it doesn't exclude physical support in favor of only spiritual support out of some fear of being taken advantage of. And it really bothers me that Watchtower would misuse and misapply this beautiful parable of Jesus in this way. And I hope it bothers you too. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. Don't forget to click subscribe, and also that little notification icon so you get notified when I release new videos. And as always, thanks for watching.